Welcome to Unibet's Inside the Octagon. I'm John Gooden with our resident expert analyst, Dan the Outlaw Hardy. The wait is over. Heavyweight champion Cain Velasquez is set to make his return at UFC 188. He'll be looking to reinstate his status as the undisputed king with a win over interim champion Fabrício Werdum.
Two UFC heavyweight champions, but only one can be the baddest man on the planet.
There's nobody better than me. I'm gonna go in and just take what's mine.
I'm the best in the world, but this title is everything for me.
Fabrício Werdum, total domination. Cain Velasquez is back.
On June 13th, only one champion will leave undisputed.
So UFC 188 live from Mexico City on Saturday 13th of June. Cain Velasquez versus Fabrício Werdum, the headliner. But Dan, there's some great matchups with very big importance throughout that card.
Most definitely. Well, Kelvin, Gastelum, Nate Marquardt is a great matchup against two really interesting and very exciting fighters. Tecia, Torres, Angela Hill, two girls that know each other very well. I'm excited to see Charles Rosa back on the card. The co-main event, though, Melendez, Alvarez is going to be a war. Can't wait.
Absolute war. Let's hope for that. But the main event, Cain Velasquez back in action. He missed out at 180. That stings, but he's back in front of these Mexican fans for this one against Fabrício Werdum, the 10th Brazilian to wear UFC gold. And what a fight this is set up to be. So please, Dan, take it away.
Well, we all know about Cain Velasquez. We all know what he's capable of. It's the pace that he brings, the speed in which he starts at, and the tenacity which he maintained throughout the whole fight.
Cardio Cain.
Exactly, cardio Cain. As soon as the fight starts, the pressure's on. And he maintains this throughout the whole 25 minutes if needs be. And the only person that can really replicate this is Daniel Cormier. And one thing they both do very well is push their opponent over that line, keep them on the outside of the octagon, over the line of that inside octagon that's drawn on the canvas, and keep him against the fence. What this allows him to do is it allows him to pressure people, throw big punches and crash into them against the fence before he drags them to the floor. Against Antonio Silva, he caught a kick and just smothered him on the floor. Bigfoot was never really able to get back to his feet, and Cain never really committed to the grapple at all. You'll see him kind of floating around on top, landing big shots, and that's something I want to talk about a bit later. But here, again, JDS, one of the strongest, most well-conditioned heavyweights in the world. And for 50 minutes now, over two fights, he just could not keep Cain Velasquez off him. It was a clinic. Cain Velasquez wrestled him, took him down, beat him up in the clinch, and hit him with some nasty, nasty right hands. And that's all from that wrestling confidence.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, I think his striking rate is second only to UFC women's bantamweight contender Jessica Andrade. We shouldn't be talking about heavyweights and bantamweights with the same kind of output.
No, it's crazy.
Pretty nuts, that. But we've been to Twitter, as we always do, so thanks to everyone that has put their questions across. And this one is from We Showed Character. I think that's a Brendan Rodgers reference, but enough about that. We'll park that. So thanks, Kieran. Will Werdum be able to weather the Velasquez storm better than he did Hunt in the early going?
Well, it's a good question, and obviously Cain Velasquez is going to try and put pressure on him, but Werdum's got a few tools that are going to be really useful for this, one of them being footwork. He's very good at moving, he's very good at keeping on his toes and picking people apart with low kicks. Now, Nigeria's camp coming into this fight, they said we've got to put Werdum on the back foot. He doesn't fight very well under pressure, but in this situation here, he's behind that inside octagon line, he's up against the fence, but he's doing it optionally. He's there by choice because he's comfortable there. And against Cain Velasquez, he's going to have to be comfortable because that's where Cain's going to try and keep him. So if he can use this lateral movement, keep him off with a jab, and then use his new Muay Thai skills that we've seen in his last few fights, if he can use them to start to be devastating as Cain starts to move through the striking range and try and clinch.
And he looks like he's been having a whole lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, he does. He does. Well, the Travis Brown fight was a fantastic one to watch. He was smiling all the way through it. Against Roy Nelson, he was really showing how good his clinch work is. He landed some great knees. He landed a plethora of different kicks, mixed it up, landed some great low kicks. And they're really going to take effect on a guy like Cain Velasquez, who puts a lot of emphasis on that charge, that forward movement. Again, against Travis Brown, picking him off with that jab, intercepting punches as he's stepping in. He's got good speed, he's got good timing, and he's got this confidence in his striking now, which he didn't have before, and it's starting to pay off. And partly the reason for this confidence is because he's not really bothered if it goes to the ground. You can play about with your striking when you're so good on the ground like Werdum is.
Yeah, and also because of the tutelage of Rafael Cordeiro at Kings. That's really paid dividends for him. But he's facing a guy that's going to try and extinguish a lot of these striking assaults. And someone who's a former NCAA Division I wrestler. And out of that AKA camp, we saw a captain's performance by DC, and they chained these things together so very well.
They do. And Cain and DC are perfect training partners for each other because they have such a similar style, that crowding style, that suffocating, not going to give you a second to breathe kind of style where they know their conditioning is going to hold up. They do a lot of hard conditioning, air-dying sessions and lots of sparring Cain and DC do. And obviously, with DC just having a title fight, Cain's been through these title fights. He's already prepared for this. So he's going to be in great shape for this as always. Now, I want to talk a little bit about that right hand that you just saw because he really commits to it. And this is partly to do with his style, him throwing looping punches, big powerful punches, and then crashing into his opponent against the fence. And here it is. This is the strike I want to talk about. Ooh. Now, just look at the extension on that. Look at that body position. And this is quite a long-range punch for Cain. Usually when he throws these, and you'll see it against Bigfoot, usually he closes the distance much quicker. He's much closer to them. If you watch this position here, when he lands this shot, their heads are practically together. They're almost touching. And he really commits. That arm's at a 90-degree angle when he's making contact with that punch, which means that's all body power in that. That's coming from his legs and his midsection. And he could generate a lot of power into that. So if Werdum's gonna survive on the feet against Cain, he's got to keep him at a distance and keep away from that right hand.
And his Muay Thai is now a black belt under Rafael Cordeiro, and it's his striking that's really paved his way to gold in the UFC.
Yeah, well, you know, you think about Werdum and you think jiu-jitsu, but we've not seen a great deal of that in the UFC so far. He's really embraced this and these new Muay Thai skills that he's got. And he puts things together so well. Against Roy Nelson in the clinch, he landed some great knees. And this is going to be really useful against Cain because not only is the clinch very good for controlling your opponent's head and setting up knee strikes, but it's also very good at using the forearms to effectively build a frame against your opponent. And when you're in contact with them, whenever they level change, you can feel that through your grip, so you'll be able to adjust and control their head. And against Cain, you know, if he can discourage that level change with these knees...
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, if you can discourage Cain from level changing, that's going to really help. It's going to be a huge benefit to him because then it's going to force Cain to stand and trade a little bit.
Plan B and
Plan
C.
B, exactly. And force him to answer these questions and solve these problems. And Fabrício Werdum offers all kinds of problems. He has this real nice charge forward where he comes forward behind his punches, follows it with a kick. This is third round against Travis Brown, flicking back to his feet. That's a heavyweight.
He could win a breakdancing competition with this.
That's a heavyweight in the third round. That's, you know, that says a lot. Turning Travis Brown off the fence, lands a good knee, and then lands a good punch early on in the combination. And after that, look how he's picking his shots. Watch him look for the body punch. There it is. Yeah. Very cerebral. He's very focused and very present. Yeah. So this is where he's going to be dangerous against Velasquez, is at range, is that distance. If you can keep Cain Velasquez on the end of his punches, he's going to be able to pick him apart, I think. And if you can add in some low kicks as well, just to add a bit of extra sting to those combinations, that's going to really discourage Cain from that forward movement that he's so dangerous at.
73% of his striking is done at range, so I can't see him detracting from that.
No.
So back to Twitter, Dan. And MMA Timo, thank you, Timo. Do you think Cain's superior wrestling is good enough to nullify Werdum's world-class Brazilian jiu-jitsu?
It's a good question. It's worth noting that Cain is also a black belt, so maybe not. I mean, there are black belts and black belts, and he's not necessarily a Fabrício Werdum standard black belt, but at least he has that knowledge in the bank. At least he's been familiar in those situations. He's come up against all different kinds of submissions, and Fabrício Werdum doesn't do anything particularly fancy, so there's not going to be any kind of surprises for him. And what advantage Cain has is this wrestling ability to use these little hooks here to upset people's balance. In this position here, he's reaping that left leg of JDS to keep him off balance, and you'll see how it plays out in a second. It's going to really pay off for him because as soon as he starts to scramble, JDS is on his back again. And Cain forces him down and starts landing shots. And as soon as he starts to turn away, again, punches coming from unusual angles and tying up wrists and legs. Against Bigfoot, this was something that he's going to be really useful against Werdum, is this frame that he builds. He's good at head position and he's good at anti-grappling. He's basically reverse engineering jiu-jitsu here. So in this position, you've got three options. You've got the overhook, the underhook, or denying both entirely, and that's exactly what Cain's doing. Most people instinctually will give up one or the other, but Cain very cerebrally here is keeping a post there. He's building a frame inside. So Bigfoot can't get underneath him to do anything, can't work sweeps, can't work any kind of submissions because he just can't get close to him. So this is something that's going to be really useful if he does end up on the ground with Werdum.
This is creating space to strike, as we can see.
Exactly, and using his head as well, very good at denying that underhook. You can see Antonio Silva fighting for it. And then here, once Antonio's got the underhook on the leg, look at him peel that off and remove it.
Not going to get swept.
Exactly. He's not in a position to just strike and not really think about it. He's conscious of where he's in danger, and he's undoing. He's taking it apart, basically, undoing the positions, reverse engineering jiu-jitsu so he can land his strikes. And this beautiful ground and pound that he's got, where he's able to move around people. He's not even got a position there. I mean, he's got mount now because he's landed some good shots, but not bothered about position. He's striking as he's moving, and he stays floating on top of him. It's like a ghost ground and pound. You just can't get your hands on him because he's always behind you.
Yeah, it's lovely to watch, but a very different style of grappling from Fabrício Werdum, who you said earlier, it's not something that we used to seeing in the UFC, but he has shown it, particularly against Nogueira.
He has, yeah. Well, the Nogueira fight stands alone for me. It was a fantastic performance. Against Roy Nelson, that inside low kick exposed his back, and immediately he jumps on that. And Roy Nelson's a Renzo Gracie black belt, so he's no slouch. And against Big Nog here, slams him to the floor. And from this point onwards, it was just downhill for Nogueira. Werdum moved around him very smoothly on just above him, not really holding in position, a bit like Cain, really. Striking from unusual positions.
It's against a black belt.
Exactly.
As well,
against Nogueira. Watch how he easily gets this hook in. Straight in just there. No resistance to it. And immediately focuses on that left arm. Hooks that left arm in Nogueira and starts to focus on it. Now, against a black belt like Nogueira, most people in that position would just hold that position and strike because it's safe. But Werdum, so confident in his ground game, watching pop his hips forward. There it is. Nice. That's where the elbow gets extended, and that's where Nogueira gave up the fight. He's got a fantastic ability on the ground, and he knows it, and that's where his confidence comes from in striking. So for me, he controls the extremities of the fight. He controls the striking range, and he controls the jiu-jitsu range.
Okay.
Cain has to keep it in the middle ground. He has to keep that. He has to keep control of the clinch. He has to dirty box him, and he has to really stay out of engaging him on the ground at all, because he just doesn't need to. It's too dangerous. And when the gold's on the line, you don't take risks that are not necessary.
Yeah, excellent stuff. Thanks, Dan. So, as we always do, let's take a look at the fight metrics and see if it galvanises a lot of your points. And we can see here that Cain Velasquez, who's making his third title defence, you know, the best in the heavyweight history in some of these departments, but some very interesting stats there for Werdum as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, look at that. Well, 21 submission attempts in his last 23 fights. He's a busy guy. 28 takedowns in 23 fights. So he's very dynamic. He's dangerous wherever the fight goes. Obviously, Cain Velasquez is, you know, biggest puncher of all time, most takedowns of all time, work rate of all time. But against Fabrício Werdum, he's going to have a lot of problems to solve, a lot of things that he may have not come across before. He's going to have to wear on Werdum if he's going to really get this finished, because it's going to be a tough test for him.
Let's turn back the clock a little bit to his Strikeforce days, and something that we just want to throw as an X factor for Werdum. We've spoken about the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but it's the level of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu against arguably the greatest of all time. Over to you.
Yeah, well, against Fedor, who's been in there on the ground against Big Nog a couple of times. Against some of the best in the world, he's never been submitted. And here Fabrício Werdum, he locks up a beautiful triangle, and he's very patient. And as soon as Fedor can feel the triangle getting tight, starts to try and escape it, Werdum takes the arm and extends it, a beautiful triangle armbar. First person to submit Fedor. And that shows the level of jiu-jitsu, the level of guard game that Fabrício Werdum's got. And if he's going to be on the floor against Cain, it's likely he's going to be on his back, and that's where he's the most dangerous.
Interesting stuff. So, it's all set to go down in Mexico. Who will have their arm raised and walk out of the Octagon wearing the UFC Heavyweight Championship belt? Will Velasquez be back to his devastating best and retain his title? Or can Werdum spoil the party and be crowned the new undisputed champion? Will there be a finish, or will the judges have their say? As always, there are odds to be found on every round, and it's all brought to you by Unibet. Watch and bet live with Unibet, the official betting partner of the UFC. So, Dan, that's the main event. Of course, plenty of other fights to look forward to as well on the main card.
It's a stacked card, John. The co-main event for me is really exciting. Eddie Alvarez, I'm really glad he's in the UFC. He's always been an exciting fighter. He's got great boxing. He's very quick, very athletic, good takedown defence. And, I mean, he took on Donald Cerrone in his UFC debut and put up a hell of a fight. And he's fighting Gilbert Melendez, a veteran, a real champion in the sport.
These guys have been going at one another for a while.
Yeah, well, you know, there's a lot of animosity between these two, and they're both quite evenly matched, in my opinion. Gilbert Melendez, a Cesar Gracie product, he's going to have probably a slight edge on the ground, but he likes to stand and trade. This is going to be a boxing match with 4-ounce sleeping pills, and someone's going to go down.
I don't know. There's some holes in some gum shields.
There you go. Kelvin Gastelum, for me, one of the top prospects in the sport right now. He's actually moving up to middleweight for this fight, so we'll see how that affects him, whether it's a positive or a negative. But he's very raw, he's very coachable, and he's got so much potential to really become something special in the sport, and he knows it. And taking on Nate Marquardt, a guy that has been in there with Anderson Silva, he's been in there to fight for the title. And he's had some struggles in his career recently, and now he's going through somewhat of a resurgence. We saw him with a beautiful armbar over James Tahuna there, and now we're seeing a new Nate Marquardt taking on the new prospect in Kelvin Gastelum. Very exciting. Charles Rosa really impressed me in his UFC debut against Denis Silva. He looked very dynamic and took the fight on less than a week's notice from what I remember. He's an American top team product, so you know he's got the ground skills. He likes to switch his stance. He's very dynamic in his striking. And talk about dynamic striking, Yair Rodriquez. A very dangerous guy, good at switching stances, good at fighting long, confidently has his hands down by his waist, and if he lands a good shot, he'll charge forward recklessly and try and get the finish. This is a really exciting fight against with two guys that are up and coming, that have got so much potential to really solidify a position in this division.
Interesting haircut on that last
one.
one.
And we've got Angela Hill as well. Can't forget that one. Angela Hill, Tecia Torres, two girls that know each other really well. It's going to be an exciting
old buddies doing
Yeah.
battle. Great stuff. Thanks, Dan. Lots more action to look forward to this month. On June 20th, the UFC returns to Berlin with the Gooden and Hardy Dream Team. Did you put that in? For a fight night headlined by Joanna Jędrzejczyk versus Jessica Penne for the UFC strawweight title. And then, on June 27th, the UFC heads to Florida for the finale of the Ultimate Fighter Brazil series. And Lyoto Machida faces Cuban powerhouse Yoel Romero in the main event. As always, you can get all the pre-fight odds with Unibet, the official betting partner of the UFC. Also coming up in July is the big one. UFC 189, Aldo versus McGregor for the featherweight strap. I'm sure plenty of you will have questions about that fight, so make sure you do tweet us at Unibet using the hashtag InsideTheOctagon with any questions regarding that one. Well, that's it from us. Enjoy UFC 188. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.